Kidding. Hey, everybody. Okay, so what a funny game to be reviewing. And I really mean that. Look, if you were at Tuesday's stream, you heard me as down in the dumps as I think I've been about the Chicago Bears in a long time. So why do I sound upbeat? Because honestly, Nick, I thought that this game was much more watchable than I anticipated that it would be. And in it being watchable, hey, I don't really care about moral victories. If anybody doesn't know where I stand on Matt Eberflus, this is who he is. I This just doesn't shock me anymore, right? Like let me put it this way, Nick. If somebody if you trusted somebody to take care of an important assignment 5 to 30 times and they didn't do it more than 65% of those times, at what point does them not turning their homework in surprise you? Right? Like, why does it keep surprising you? And maybe this is unfair of me, but I'm just not surprised anymore. And in not being surprised, I sit here like, what do you want me to feel? I'm excited about the offense. I thought the offense was legitimately fun. But the rest of it, man, tough living. Tell me,
It's
how you feeling?
well, I mean, it sucks. Two, I feel bad for Caleb, but the main thing is just like it's just continual coaching at this point, and it's sad to see. I mean, when you look at a game, Robert, where the Bears won two two to well 2/3 to 1/3 in time of possession, turnover margin, total yards, um, and lost the game. I mean, that's hard to do. And it's also interesting that when you have Flus is like Mr. Bend Don't Break. Okay. Like that's like what it is. So it's like, okay, hey,
That's a
you had
word
to
for it.
punt it back to him and you're Bend Don't Break. And then on 2nd and 6, you run cover 0, cover 1, like all out blitz. When they have to score a touchdown, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, this is when you don't do that. And uh, do a simulated pressure. You know what I mean? Bring them in different ways. Send everybody. Like, I just, I don't know. I've had it. I see people commenting wanting to be positive, but sorry, y'all, I can't get there.
Oh, it's fine. I mean, if nothing else, Nick, let me ask you this, okay? All right. So, uh, let's say the Bears beat the Packers, right? Then what? I'm not actually trying to be twisty because we're not even on the podcast yet. We'll start the podcast in a minute. But let me just pick your brain, okay? Does a game like this help solidify the decision that you probably aren't moving on with Matt Eberflus as the coach going forward? Like, would winning this game have started to put that bug in your mind that maybe this program is worth salvaging?
No, because I said this in the last pod. I said if they would win every game and win the Super Bowl from like last week on, then I still would not have confidence in the staff.
But it's
Because in the back of your mind, you think this could happen,
I
and it
know.
did. It did again.
I'm right there with you. I promise I am. But I had to ask you after the emotions of all of being that close to beating the Packers. Because, dude, when people lose 2 games, let alone 3, they start to act like you just got to burn the building down. Right. And then
Mhm.
you win 3 games in a row, and suddenly the Super Bowl is the only thing on the menu because you are unstoppable. That's how
Mhm.
emotions work in a sport like football. So I do feel like it's clear minded moments like this, where I don't know if you felt this way, but the late great Denny Green said it best. You are who I thought you were, Matt
Mhm.
Eberflus.
A
And I
and
mean,
I've been a Flu supporter, Rob. I mean, I've been again, I'm later to judge than a lot of people. I was later to judge on Nate Davis, Chase Claypool, and you can go through the list of like the failed Bears players. I was supportive of Swift when people were ready to throw him to the wolves, and that turned out. But like, I'm later than most people. So if I'm like this, Rob, I feel like it's 95% of the fan base and Eberflus's family at this point.
I tend to agree with you. Also, I want to respect your wish to do something else with your Sunday besides just wallow in
Yep.
this. So we'll get the podcast started. Taco Man, Mr. MDJ, Coven Kester, Kaiser Klein, Akusai, Clark Y, Case, Demo. I see all you folk. If you chat something that is question related, I will attempt to weave it into the
Yeah.
podcast like an expert seamstress. But outside of that, you guys know the drill. If you've been around this before, it's fundamentally a live podcast recording, and we'll work with it as best we can. But thank you guys so much for showing up. It is always fun. I know it doesn't feel like it. Covering games like these. And hey, there is a bright side to everything, Nick. We'll get to it. I really, truly, Nick, I really mean this. Okay. I think that things like combined yards are neat. They don't really matter, right? Like it's great that Caleb. We're not even on the podcast show yet, but I did want to say this. Like it's great that Caleb combined for over 300 yards. Whatever. It's great that he or like if he'd thrown 3 touchdowns, it would have been great that he threw 3 touchdowns. Football is about winning the game.
Yep.
Football is about being big in the big moments, and I don't want to make one comparison in a way that like sucks. I just want to call this out, Nick. Justin Fields had an extraordinary statistical game against the Denver Broncos. Extraordinary statistical game where
Mhm.
he scored, I believe it was 2 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown, all in like the first quarter. Reefed the team. And as the game started to turn away from the Bears, he ended up committing a fumble. And then on the next drive, threw a pick, and the Bears lose a game that it felt impossible to lose.
Was was that the 4th and 1 where he could just like got tripped by like a toenail, or was that the Cleveland game?
That's the Cleveland game.
Okay.
This was the second down where he spun out, or he
Oh,
spun around on
lost the
that
ball.
rollout and got hit and fumbled, and the ball bounced away from him, got returned for a touchdown, et
Yep.
cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The reason I mentioned this, Nick, I don't know if you felt this, but I've watched enough football in my life to where I feel like I've got a decent gauge on how the players on the field are feeling. And it felt like the Packers wrested control of this game 3 or 4 times in the second half, where the offense would assert itself with a huge play, and it started to feel inevitable that the Packers would regain a lead. And I know this sounds outrageous, but it felt like Caleb Williams that was taking the moment on his shoulders and finding ways to make enough plays on offense to keep the game even.
Mhm.
Sometimes that generated points. Sometimes that generated opportunities. Sometimes or sometimes just like the fourth down, right? It didn't do anything. And it was a sick moment that ended up keeping a drive alive that the Bears offense made too many mistakes and still couldn't capitalize on. But in that fire, Caleb managed to stand tall in a way I haven't seen a Chicago quarterback do, especially not against that team, in a very long time. As far as the future, I know you've
Well,
heard this before, Bears
can I
fans.
stay on that part of it?
Yes.
Like, with that, so the play, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of people who talk about the play of the game. The most impressive play for me from Caleb was 4th and 3, not throwing a 5-yard pass, not throwing a slant, not throwing conservative, throwing the fade back shoulder to Rome, who had a really good release on that one, by the way, if you guys rewatch it, for a big gain on the sideline. I was like, "Oh," like, because you could go like, "Hey, we have to get the first down, then you can," like conservative, and he wasn't conservative. Like, that was like the most exciting part of the game is like Caleb was just like, "Whatever, I'm gonna be me," and that was a big time throw. Like, I wrote it. I wrote notes. If you guys see me and I'm looking now, I have a bunch of notes here, written on the back of a scouting card, by the way, from a game that we
Yeah, you
coached.
do.
But anyways, when I put down fade on 4th and 3 to Rome, I said, "Holy buckets."
And my favorite part about it, Nick, just talking it out with you, it's like a lot of the best quarterbacks that I've seen just don't hesitate. They see a throw that they know they can make, and they
Mhm.
make that throw. And every time they miss it, right? People go, "Why you throwing a back shoulder fade on 4th and 3, dongus? Like you can't make that throw." But when you make it, nobody says that. Nobody asks a question. Nobody worries about it because you made the play. I love that Caleb saw that one-on-one opportunity and said, "I can drop that in there." I thought his deeper balls generally looked better today. I mean,
Mhm.
it felt as if Caleb had let's call it a much more sensible internal rhythm today compared to what he has been, where it has felt kind of like he's trying to be somebody he isn't. I mean, even down like you're talking about, Nick, on the 4th and 2, if memory serves. I think it was a 4th and 2. No, it was a 3rd and 4 a little later in the game. Caleb rips off a bunch of runs in the first half, and in the second half, that meant that generally Green Bay left him alone. They
Yeah.
said, "Okay, be in the pocket, whatever. Then just don't do that again."
Yep.
And so that allowed Caleb Williams to then hang in the pocket like he wanted to and find completions. Watching the young quarterback was fun entertainment. I mean, it was good football.
Mhm.
And it's not perfect. I mean, I would even tell you, Nick, I don't know how you feel. I feel like this is about what I expected to see around week 7. So the fact that we get it in week 11 kind of feels like Waldron and the rest of the Bears organization stunted the growth of the young quarterback a little. But I also thought that there was a chance that this was a wheels fall off game, and that did not happen. So
Mhm.
thank goodness this is the kind of game at the kind of time I know I needed to keep the faith for the future alive, even if now still feels like a sunk cost.
Well, the number one thing that I've said continually, the purpose of this season is to develop Caleb Williams and to figure out if he's your quarterback. And this game said that. Like so many big moments where it was, the passes to Keenan Allen, which I felt like he was like the third down guy. I mean, even with that, Rob, if we look at the stats, third down, 9 of 16 when they were what, like 3 of like 40, I felt like
Yeah, I think
before
it was
that.
like
Like,
6 for 46. Like, you're not being hyperbolic. They were
yeah,
awful on the
yeah.
last
And he and
billion
he
third downs.
and he was calm in the pocket. I mean, those two back-to-back sacks. I mean, the one he took off and ran. So, but I think I don't blame him because you were running for so many yards. I was like, yeah, that's fine. The other one, Braxton Jones getting just bull rushed isn't, that's common. But I mean, huge throws continually throughout the game that again, I feel, and again, it was just weird the games against Arizona and not Washington. Washington, I think it was up and down, but the Arizona New England game where like he didn't look like himself. This he looked like himself again, where he can make plays, scrambling, running, throwing, accuracy. I mean, not everything's perfect. Like the 2 pointer to Komet, I'm curious what you thought, where he threw it to the back pylon. I think Komet ran that wrong.
I think Kmet got bodied. Like, just talking it out, it's there are gonna be a bunch of people just like you're talking about. They're gonna say, "I think Kmet ran the wrong route," and I'm like, "I think he just got jammed so hard that there was no getting to the corner."
Maybe.
And so he converted his route in the middle of the route to something that he could actually reach, as opposed to trying to get to a corner that he was never going to get to anymore. But this is something you and I've talked about, Nick, where we crave a quarterback that plays with anticipation. The
Mhm.
team has to live up to that because if the quarterback throws to a spot and you're not there, you're going to get an incomplete pass. And that's life. It happens sometimes. I've watched a billion Rodgers plays where stuff exactly like that happened. But Rodgers has multiple MVPs, and nowadays we're talking about him post Super Bowl, post multiple playoff appearances. Like, Rodgers has a different glow to him, not necessarily as a Jet, but across the rest of his career. We are watching whatever Caleb Williams' career is be birthed week to week.
Mhm.
So we don't know if we're talking about the next Cade McNown. I seriously doubt it. Or the first good Bears quarterback in the modern era. And so maybe one day we'll look back at this. This felt like the kind of game that we could end up looking back at in the future, saying that's about where he started to turn it around. And
I mean,
guess what, Nick? That would be normal.
yeah.
Historically speaking, that would be really normal if this was around when the quarterback figured it out one way or another.
Let,
But
let me give you the most positive spin, and then we can get into the pod here. Okay.
mhm.
This is the classic. People are like, okay, Waylon's going to make this the most positive, take ever. Okay. Here's how this game's perfect. If you want to be an optimist, everybody. Okay.
Get there, say it. I know
Okay.
what you're gonna say.
Okay. One, Caleb bounce back, which we just talked about. This reinforces that there's going to be a head coaching change, which again, I don't ever want that to happen because I say that all the time. Like I think it should happen, but I'm not going to say another man should lose his job. And also the Bears have a earlier draft pick. Like you don't even like if we're gonna keep doing this, because like at this point, I don't see them making the playoffs. So might as well make the pick a little bit earlier. So there you go. Caleb looked good. We're closing the gap on Green Bay. There's probably gonna be a head coaching change, and the pick's gonna be earlier. I mean, that's the most positive way you can look at this.
I agree. Ready?
Yeah, man. Let's rock and roll.
I love that we're back to talking about draft picks. Bears draft pick up. Stock and Flus. It's hard to go lower, so I feel like it didn't move. You know what I mean? Actually, there's a chance that Flus's stock went slightly up because he didn't lose by 2. I mean, it's sad day, dude, because it's like, well, the Bears covered. Yay. But anyways, let's roll. Ready?
Yeah, man.
All right, we are recording, and I'll bring us in. The Bears lose to Green Bay in a game that, oh my goodness, they had it right there. So you tell me, Bears fan, are the Bears who we thought they were? Or is this just same story, different verse? Or are you feeling a little upbeat that the Bears covered the spread? They were a tip away from beating the Packers. All kinds of opinions are going to come out of a game that was an assumed loss, but the loss came with a lot more character than I think we anticipated. So Nick and I'll talk you through all the frustrations, all the high points, a lot of the low points, and everything else we can think of in a condensed Bear With Us because, well, we're going to want to bury this game as soon as we can. So we'll talk about it on this episode of Bear With Us. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bear With Us, a Chicago Bears podcast hosted by what's going on, everybody? And goodness, I've lost it. All right, here it is. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bear With Us, a Chicago Bears podcast hosted by yours truly, Robert Schmitz, editor-in-chief of the Bears blog, right here alongside my co-host, Nick Whalen of Football Guys, as we try to bring you the best and I guess we'll call it most measured Bears podcast right now, just because I feel like, Nick, everybody's breaking the flamethrower out, right? Like, you're only really allowed to have one emotion, and let's be blunt, right? The offense was fun. Thomas Brown, I think, delivered above expectation. Legitimately refreshing football to watch. Matt Eberflus is who I've always known him to be. A loss like this, man, they just find a way, don't they? And so it is always shocking in the moment because it's like, wow, I can't believe they lost that game. And that second thought you have, I know you had it too, Nick, is another one. they figured out how to do it again. So
I I
how are you feeling?
picture have you seen Anchorman,
Yes.
Rob? I picture all the other Bears podcasts and people are like Steve Carell, where he's just like loud noises. That's how I picture everyone just yelling right now. I 100% the kicks happening. By the way, y'all, okay, we're going to talk about all the ins and outs. Okay, from a coaching perspective, I have this written down. I have a bunch of notes here, and I have worst hash for right-footed kicker. They had it on the left side. It's harder to push it than it is to pull it. So again, I think they were set up on the wrong hash. Every kicker has their preference. Okay, I get that, but it's easier from the right hash. So even that right there, when we're set up, I'm like, I don't expect us to make this. I just didn't. I was like, we're gonna shank it, double doink it, and then blocking. I was like, yep, fully expected. Like if they made it, I was gonna be shocked more than the other way around. How did you feel?
I gotta be honest with you, okay? So I came into this game again fully expecting a loss. The Packers dog walking the team straight down the field immediately.
Mhm.
Completely expected, to be honest with you. Like, yep. All right, there's our D line problem. Oh, look at that. We took another free snap penalty. Up, there it is. Wide open guy. Up, there's my dog Stevenson allowing 18 yards of separation per catch. Like,
Yep.
oh, yeah, there it is. We didn't do a preview pod, partially because both of us were just too depressed about the state of the team and had nothing to say. I know it, you know it, and we never texted about it because we knew there wasn't
Yep.
a conversation. But so I say that because this game was the first watchable Green Bay game that I
Wow.
swear I've watched in like 4 years. And I know that that's not much of a standard, but this is the 11th loss in a row. I'm
The what was the one, Justin Fields, where they were up on Green Bay, but we were tanking, and so I was okay actually losing that game. They were up in the 4th, I think?
Was that the Jameer Bird touchdown game? The one in Lambeau?
No, I think this one was at home.
Oh man.
where N'Keal Harry had that deep reception on
Yes, it was. It was
Jair
where
Alexander.
everything started well, and they started what 17-3, and then they lost because
Yep, and I was like, "Okay,
you know
we're
what sucks,
tanking,
Nick?
it's fine."
You know what sucks? So I think that this makes six losses at least that the Bears have had where ESPN charted them as an above 80% winning percentage at some point in the game, and they managed to lose, right? And you just brought up another game that we don't count because we pretty much just like cordon off the entire 2022 year and we go, it's a tank year. Can't hold that against the coach. We give so much grace and mercy to this coaching staff, and they are still finding ways to, I don't want to call it shine through, right? But to put up statistics, numbers, and patterns that are so disturbing that I don't know how anybody could be pro Eberflus right now. But I will say it was so refreshing to finally see the talent on this offense look like the talent on this offense. I don't think Braxton Jones is a perfect tackle, but if you let him get into space, he will run block
Yeah,
like a demon. And Thomas Brown called 4 kickout plays that had Braxton Jones in space, and he made 4 critical blocks, including one that's going to get him thrown in jail for a murder. Like it was an awesome game to watch just from letting DJ Moore be DJ Moore. Roma Dunze, 60 plus yards on 6 catches, starting to look like Roma Dunze. Keenan Allen not getting used more than it warrants, right?
right.
And it's like
In the slot, option routes, like, makes sense.
it's not as if this was some perfect game. I don't want to act like it was some perfect game. It's more like this looked like the normal Bears that you and I anticipated would be a lot more fun than they've been.
Mhm.
And being able to see that and not feel insane, not feel like this team, was built on top of an Indian burial ground, like that's the kind of thing that made me feel a little more normal. And maybe there's a sick part of me that was like, good, Matt Eberflus, if you're going to get yourself fired, I'm glad that you kept losing because why make this complicated for George McCaskey? But that's
Right.
my bitter contempt.
So I'm gonna go through, Robert, let's go through, there's a lot of coaching decisions that,
A lot of
I'm
them.
upset about, okay? So I think we should just get through them because I think we're tape guys and we'll remember all these, okay? And a lot of these, again, I just highly disagree with. And that's where I think the game was lost because, as I said before the pod started, the Bears won in total yards. They won in third down efficiency. By the way, y'all, Chicago was 12 of 19 on third or fourth down. Green Bay was 1 of 6 and it won the turnover margin. Chicago did. And they won the time of possession by a massive amount. They won time of possession by almost 13 minutes. Like, it's crazy. But okay, let's get to the coaching situations, Robert. Okay. Number one, 12 guys are on the field and they're about to snap the ball. Okay. Everybody, you're a coach. What do you do?
You call a timeout.
Hey, we
Duh.
got one right. Okay, they're 1 for 1. If you guys can mark these down at home, okay, 1 for 1. Good for you guys. Okay. All right. How about this one? Okay. Your I think it's they were the 6 or 7 yard line. Okay. So you're close to you're backed up, on defense, and you got to put a defensive line out there. Okay. So think about like you're close to the goal line, right? Green Bay's got tight ends in the game, some heavy personnel. Okay. This is the defensive line. Let me know if this is who you would put out there. Okay. Austin Booker and Jacob Martin were your DNs. Brian Coward and Chris Williams were your D tackles. Is that the defensive line that you should probably put out there when they're near the goal line and they brought beef in?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Look at you killing this one, Robert. 2 for 2. Look
But
at
look
that
at
one.
that.
So
That's where the
it's a,
depth conversation we've been having
mhm,
since June comes
mhm.
back to haunt the team.
Goodness.
The,
I mean, they ran duo and they just
they
moved
just
Chris
mauled them.
Williams like 5 yards.
It's I want to take this moment, Nick, just talking about that, where it's like
Sure.
all
Sure. Yeah.
these stupid little minute details in
Hmm.
roster building, in team construction, in game decision making, all of them add up. The Bears lost this game 20-19 in a
Hmm.
game that included a disgusting interception by Jordan Love that he would tell you should never happen. that took
No.
points off the board for Green Bay. And I say this because all these little things, like you catch a break here, you get a bad decision there. I don't know why the Packers went for it, to use an example, on 4th and 6. There was no reason to do that, if you ask me. Like, I wouldn't have been scared enough of the Bears offense. You kick that field goal, you pocket another one. Now the Bears have to rally for a touchdown late in the
Yep.
game instead of rallying for a game-winning field goal. All that stuff matters too. But
Mhm.
in a moment like this, you sit there and you can't say, well, we lost one D tackle, so I guess we're hosed. But that's where the Bears are,
Yep.
right?
So, all right. So the next one I have is this one. And again, y'all, I don't know how you guys feel. Sometimes I feel like I curse the Bears. Okay. So the Bears got a first down at the 44-yard line after the Green Bay went for it, right? And we dug out of there. We're getting some first downs. Roshan had some clutch runs.
Mm-hmm.
1st and 10. And I tweeted, I said, churn that clock, boys. And then what did we immediately do after the first down? Okay. Here's the sequence. Noah Huddle, quick screen to Roma Dunze for 2 yards with 15 seconds left on the clock. Again, there's 6:05 left. You're up 19-14. Then an incomplete pass, then a 5-yard pass short of the sticks, and then you have to punt. I'm just like, I mean, I understand not going ultra conservative, but you didn't have to snap it with 15 seconds left on the clock. Okay. So that's one thing. And then you didn't have to throw an incomplete pass, right? It was close. The one I think it went off of Keenan's hands, but like you could scramble. You could have like a boot where it's a run pass option. You know, like you could do more things there that they didn't. So in that sequence, Robert, did you agree with what they did after they had the first on there at the 44 still going?
This one, I will kind of defend them, sort of, by trying to say, Nick, I've watched a lot of football teams, and it feels like there's a lot more levels to offense than just three, right? But we can distill it into three offenses, okay? You've got a bad offense that has no winning gear, if you follow me. You have a middling offense that has one winning gear. They do one thing, one way. If they can't do it, they can't score. A decent example of this would be the 2019 Titans, where if anybody remembers that team, they were either running the ball well or they lost, and there was no in between. And if they didn't run the ball well, they couldn't run play action. If they didn't run play action, they couldn't pass the ball at all. And they had no answers. One gear. Okay. And then you have other teams, like I believe the current Chiefs, who everybody's binning them for being a bad offense. They are not a bad offense. They're an extreme, like, they are a fine tuned winning offense that makes all the plays they need to continue to win games. And
Mhm.
they have multiple gears. So, Nick, for Pat Mahomes and that Chiefs team, when you say, hey, let's slow it down a little bit, let's start nursing some clock and make plays that way, I think they're good enough to do it. Whereas this Bears team seems to thrive on tempo and like only tempo. It almost seems like if you give them time to think about what they're doing, somehow they screw up all their assignments. And I don't know why. It's just the way this team has been right now, where if you get them out of their own
Mhm.
head, Roma Dunze remembers, oh yeah, I'm a dog. And if you let him think about it, suddenly the ball pops off his hands. And I don't know. But
I
so them sticking with the only thing that had worked up to that point, I get it. They thought it would work. They thought they would
no,
keep going down the field.
I get it. I just like do it and then I don't know, take more time. But so like that right there would be 15. That's 55 seconds roughly.
Yep.
That would be off the clock for when Green Bay got the ball back. Okay, so that's one. Okay, so that one where we're 50-50 on.
And this
Okay.
this was at 6 minute mark, right?
Yes, yeah,
So
6 minute mark.
4th and 3. You're winning. Do you punt?
That's tough. I
I'm
mean,
glad you say that. I saw a
yeah.
lot of, I mean this in the most positive way possible. If you are one of these people, know that I love you and I mean this tongue in cheek. I saw a lot of keyboard warriors that pounded their chests and said, I would have gone for it. And I'm like, and if you didn't get it, you would have been why the team lost. Like,
Yes.
you could say what you will. This team has hung 2 successful drives on you so far. Like, you're not that scared of him if you're that defensive coach. Now, maybe Nick, Ben Johnson, Drew Petzing, Liam Cohen, maybe those guys go for it because these guys believe that their sword is their offense and you're going to live and you're going to die on your sword, right?
Right.
But that's just not Matt Eberflus. This
Well,
comes with the territory.
things just aren't aligned, which I'll explain here in a minute. So I'm with you because there's two things. One is if you're Flus and you think you can keep your job, you play conservative, right? Which doesn't explain what I'll talk about here in a minute. Send you punt. If you think you have to win this game to save your job, then you go for it. The one thing I would lean on here where what makes it tough for me, most of the time I'd be like for sure punt, is when you are 12 of 19 in third or fourth down situations already in the game, you're cruising. Like odds are in your favor to get the 3 yards. And so that's why I'd be like, maybe I would go for it. The Here's what I expected, Rob. Okay. By the way, when we fake it like we're gonna hike the ball, they don't jump. But then when they do it, we jump. Okay. Coaching makes me mad. But I would have liked them to fake like hiking it, right? And then Caleb to like walk off. You know what I mean? And then they snap it directly to Swift or Roshan. Like I would have liked something like that, where it's like, we tried something crazy, right? And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But like that would be something creative that you see other teams do that you don't see Chicago do, or you snap it to Roshan and then he throws it to Caleb. You know what I mean? Like just something,
Right.
whatever. That's what I was like expecting, something crazy, but they went conservative mode.
Yep. And speaking of conservative mode, I thought it was hilarious, right? So I feel like you don't normally get people that are in the booth talking with the same conservative 2003 football mindset that we used to listen to. And Tom Brady has been a breath of old air. And I actually don't have the problem with it that I think other people do. This feels very at home. Like, this is the guys I used to listen to. Phil Simms talked the same way. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
all these guys, this
I
is how
I
football
remember
was
Phil Sims
played.
playing, Robert.
Say that again.
I remember Phil Sims playing.
Oh man,
I don't think you were
I
born
don't.
yet. I remember Phil.
But I say that because Tom Brady is very conservative. Tom Brady, you get to field goal range. He wants to run a run play, and the Bears do. And then he wants to run a second one just to get a couple more yards. And you hear him go, okay, okay, okay. So I guess they won't then. And when Tom Brady, I mean, you got plenty of people out there that want to whip out a wide receiver screen. They want to send somebody deep, right? Like you want to take it, you want to give them a spear screen look, and you want to launch that thing to Roma Dunze, who just runs straight by a corner that's driving on DJ Moore running into the flat, like a fake screen, but without needing the pump, right?
Right.
You have plenty of teams that do that. Shout out to you, Tom, in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, throwing to Scotty Miller at the end of a half for crying out loud. But
Yeah.
no, the Bears don't do that. They invite disaster. Like, here's my thing, okay? In a vacuum, kicking a 46-yard field goal from what I assume is Santos's preferred hash, I get it. Like, this should be a high conversion play. You
Mhm.
should win the game. But this reminds me way too much of Mark Trestman calling a kick on second down at the lip of Robbie Gould's field goal range. This reminds me of Matt Nagy settling for a 43-yard field goal, though that one I feel weird about because that was the playoffs and they did take a shot at the end zone. This one, they really got there. Like they really got to that lip of field goal range, knowing that they won't kick it if it's 8 yards further back. And they said, no, we're good. This is it. This is all we want.
So
And
here so here's what makes that sequence even worse for me, Robert. Okay. If we go back, okay, Keenan Allen makes the catch. And I actually thought I was like, did he for sure catch that? And that's why Green Bay used the timeout, which I thought was smart on their part, right? They could have saved it and then they could have, you know, iced the kicker, whatever, but they didn't. So a timeout was called, Robert. Okay. You bring Caleb and the whole offense over. You're talking to everybody. It's first and 10 at the 30, and you still have a timeout. You could have easily called 2 plays in the huddle, ran the ball, or 3 plays. It's fine. 3 runs, run, run, run. Or, hey, 2 runs and we call a timeout and then we try to throw something on the sidelines. If it's not there, then we kick the field goal. Like something like that, right? Because you had time to set it up. Because you can get guys off the pile and do whatever, or you could,
You could do this
however you want to
crazy
do it.
thing, Nick, where on first down you can run the ball. Okay. On second down, what, Nick? Remind me. You know football pretty well. What's an easy way to take a chill pill to stop the clock? For it's not free. It's gonna cost you a down, but it'll give you a full play clock to think about
Mhm. Yep.
something on third down. What would you call that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Spiking the ball.
And that's really easy to do when you run it up the middle because
Very easy.
everybody's already there. So
Mhm,
you could easily hand it off, spike it at 25, and figure out what you wanted to do from there. Or don't.
mhm,
Just like you're saying, no ho it like 3 times. Go run up the gut, toss crack around the right hand side, and
mhm.
or something like that. It doesn't have to be crazy, but man, we've been down this road before. Flus makes a decision that should have been fine, like calling the Hail Mary prevent that he did, right? Invites the opportunity to roll the dice for the other
Mhm.
team. The dice roll against him, and now we have to sit here saying, couldn't you have made your odds better, bro? And I think he could have. So here we are, right?
Well, here's the other thing too, even with the blocked kick, which one, by the way, we got flagged by Dexter, right? Like whatever you would call that, like pushing off the guy. And, did they do that? That's debatable, I think. But despite that, so there's this thing called trajectory, Robert. Okay. As I'm kind of trying to do this with a pen right now, right? So, like, the further away you are, the lower your trajectory has to be to make the kick. So, the closer you are, the higher it is, and the less odds of it getting blocked. So, like, even from that perspective, you'd want to make it closer, and your kicker doesn't have a good leg. Okay. So, both of those things don't make a whole lot of sense in terms of just wanting to get it closer. I even thought about it. You could run the ball, Robert, call timeout, run the ball again, and then spike it. You could do it in that order if you
Yes.
wanted to. Like there was zero reason to not get 2 or 3 plays off to get it closer there. You could roll out, Robert, and have a sideline smash combination if you wanted to. I understand there's a risk for a sack. I understand there's a risk for an interception. There's a risk for a hold. All that is a risk.
There's always a risk,
But
but like you're saying, Nick, to use an example, okay. So let's draw it up in our heads, right? We're going to do a play action rollout, right? We expect that Green Bay is going to see it coming. Don't you think? Like
sure.
Green Bay in particular tends to tell its edges to go after the quarterback on play action. I get the impression it's a LaFleur thing because both defensive coordinators, Joe Barry and now Halfley, have both done this. And we've seen it sack innumerable Bears quarterbacks over the last couple of years. So, what are we going to do? Are we going to take the sniffer that generally goes to the flat and send him to the flat? Nick, probably not. You're going to
Mhm.
have Cole Kmet come across the formation and light the defensive end up so that no matter what, your guy's not getting hit immediately. And then, if you don't like what you see, throw it out of bounds.
Mhm.
Whatever. If you do like what you see, maybe you run it for 7 yards. Maybe you throw it down the field. But you don't like I say this because there are ways to what's the word that I'm looking? There are ways to scheme up not getting sacked immediately.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you take that risk. You say the ball fake's gonna corral the defensive end. We don't need to worry about him. And then there are other times that you can effectively max protect on a play just like that and make it as low risk as you're gonna get. But doesn't this take us back to at its core, Nick? Doesn't this take us back to what we've always known? Matt Eberflus is going to coach not to lose these games.
I know. Well,
And
okay. Let me go back on that then. Okay. Let's rewind. So we're both in. That's my one of my other coaching ones was obviously the right before the field goal. Let's go back to when he should have been conservative and he wasn't. Okay. Chicago's up 19-14. Packers get the ball back. They run for 4 yards with Josh Jacobs. It's 2nd and 6. They're on their own 26, 3:40 left. They have to score a touchdown. This is when everybody in the building expects conservative Flus to come out, right? It's been like that the whole game. Packers have been checking it down to running backs the whole game for big
whole game,
gains.
whole
Check
game.
down, check down, check down, check down. That's fine. That's what this is for, y'all. Check down. Make them beat you and then score the touchdown. Nope. Flus has cover one or cover zero all out blitz. Christian Watson gets a crosser, which they reviewed it. I'm still 50-50 on whether he caught the ball because I saw the ball move. I think if that's a Bears player, it's incomplete. That's just because I think we're kind of cursed that way. But anyway, so but why would you go all out blitz there? I understand that it can be a run blitz too that can help and a pass blitz, but that one doesn't make sense to me in terms of the situation in the game. If you're down, Robert, if let's flip the score, okay? And you're down 14-19, sure, I get the all out blitz then. What does it matter? Right? But then you allow a 60-yard completion. Like it's like you didn't have to let this even get to that. You could have
Nope.
played conservative there and they didn't. That play call might drive me the most nuts out of the whole day.
If we really get to dissecting, man, there are tons of this. There's so much of this that
Yep.
I just cannot stand. Like, for instance, the Bears have to leave Sanborn in there, and you have to. This is not Jack's fault because the Bears don't have enough juice to stop the run without Sanborn being in there. Who, by
Mhm.
the way, I believe that Sanborn is earning himself a Nick Kwiatkowski contract, and I tend to doubt it's going to be in Chicago because he's playing his way out of affordability. And if I was another team, I would view him pretty similarly to TJ Edwards. And I mean that in the highest praise possible, where it's like, that guy
Yeah.
can play. That
He's
guy
not
can
that
play,
good
Nick.
though.
What?
He's not TJ Edwards. TJ Edwards is top 10 linebacker for multiple years.
TJ Edwards is not the run fitter that I think Sanborn is, and Sanborn isn't the coverage guy that TJ is. So
What
you
gets
trade a
paid
little.
more?
What?
You know which one gets paid more?
I know. And well, I don't know, man. TJ didn't get paid very much, but
Well, more well he's Hunter Hillenmeyer.
right.
Same guy. Like he's a Sam that's an overachiever that you root for, but he's not great in coverage.
And all this to say that because this is really what it matters to me, at least, that Matt LaFleur got Matt Eberflus into the looks that he wanted him in
Yep.
all day long. For
Yep.
instance, yeah, it sucks that Jalen Johnson's feet get tangled up with Christian Watson, and basically a fortunate trip becomes a 60-yard scamper down the field. But dude, Nick, Love had 15 yards per attempt today. It is
Mhm.
not as if Christian Watson going properly down after or like past the first down line seems to be changing the direction the Green Bay wind was blowing. Good on the Bears for stopping or for holding up in the red zone twice. It's the only reason the score was still in doubt, but
Yep.
the defense is getting run up and down the field. And I know Billings is important. I'm a massive Billings stumper, but dude, tough game from Matt Eberflus, who tends to have tough games against
What
Matt LaFleur.
what is Elijah Hicks thinking on that one bomb? I can't even find the ball. I'm turned around and then I can't make a play on it. Like
Dude, as an
that
avowed
should have been a pick.
I will say this. I did think it was pretty funny. I would love to hear I would love to get Brady in my house reviewing both of those plays. I'll come to you, Tom. No worries. Never mind. You don't need to come to my house. But I would love to take another look at both contested catch opportunities. The ball that Caleb throws to Keenan Allen, who's one-on-one with a linebacker, sue Caleb Williams for thinking the 6'1 Keenan Allen can come down to the ball like that. And then on the other hand, you've got Jordan Love, who throws a ball into double coverage with the safety sitting right underneath the play, who just forgets where he is out of absolutely nowhere. It's like how I don't quite get how one of them was this perfect ball into or like that was really well placed, and the other was too contested and a
I
challenge.
know.
But go off, Tom Brady.
Yep.
But
I know. But like that one right there is like, okay, go conservative mode. Like so all of these are a bunch of coaching decisions. So on top of that, Robert, is some small things. One is so many pre-snap penalties in terms of motions, in terms of jumping off sides for Montez Sweat, in terms
yep,
of etc. I know that we got away with the DeAndre Swift.
the blatant one.
Like also DeAndre Swift, what are you doing? But I feel like Green Bay interfered Rome on that fade that was not called. But here's the other one that drives me nuts. Time and again, this is why it's coaching. It's not just like a one-time thing. Time and again, Robert, Tremaine Edmonds, huge, like massive man and crazy athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Ball gets thrown into the flat. And I think it was Chris Brooks, 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage, catches it. Edmonds is 5 yards away. And he waits. And he waits. and he waits. And then by the time he makes contact with him, and I think it was like Byard came up to him, whatever, the back then gets 4 yards. Instead of him going and meeting or closing that
Yep.
distance, he waits. This is constant. The Bears are waiting all the time. And so again, I don't know if that's bend don't break, if that's a fluke thing, but like again, that's another coaching thing. Like all these things add up into this massive thing where if if we don't go cover zero there, if Hicks can look at the ball, or if I don't know, Jonathan Owens is in there, who I think is a better coverage guy, like Chicago might have blown them out today. But instead, all these little things make thing or jumping off sides on the 4th and 3, which everyone, just like the game, what was it last Thursday? No one thought the Eagles are going to snap the ball, but then Washington jumps off sides and then ends the game. Like all these things add together to another Bears loss.
Yep. And I mean, look, I could pitch the opposite that you talk about how the Bears were a couple of, let's call it a couple of tightenings of like different nuts across the team away from really winning today. But Nick, I mean, I felt like the Packers shot themselves in the foot a lot. This reminded me of the Week 18 game where it felt like the Packers were way better than the Bears on their offense and somehow only put up 17 points because of the right drop here, the wrong fumble there. Again, I know I'll go back to it as if it was like the play of the game, but Nick, that interception was ghastly and it seemed like it lived in the Packers' minds for a hot minute because
Mhm.
after that, it seemed not like they were gun shy, but I don't know. Hard to explain. Maybe it was as simple as the Bears just possessed the ball for forever because they did after a play like that. But
Something else that bothered me, and again, I'm typically not a ref guy, Robert. Okay, Troll Smith picks that off, right? Which, by the way, I was like, oh man, that almost touched the ground. But he gets up, runs, he's on the sideline, steps out of bounds, gets hit by Zach Tom. No flag. That's a late hit. Like, I don't care what it is. That's a late hit.
if
If he would have
I was a
flopped,
ref, if I was a ref, I'm not giving Chicago one late hit after the acting job that Caleb did on the play after a play that easily could have been called a late hit. Like, I don't blame the let the boys play attitude. The only refereeing thing that I will bring up, and Nick, you and I try not to talk about referees. I think it's a little worth talking about in this case. Personally, I thought there was a decent frame where it showed that Christian Watson did not catch the ball that ended up
yes.
being a 60-yard pass. I'm
Mhm.
not going to spit on it because it doesn't really matter, right? At the end of the day, the Bears had an opportunity to win the game. We're going to get there. There's a fun part that we talked about in the pre-show. It's obviously Caleb Williams that we've got a whole section in this show planned for. But Nick, the moment I saw that replay, I was like, "Ah, that sucks." This is that classic like I think it is, but I can't prove it kind of play where I thought there's a decent shot of the tip of the ball hitting the ground without control.
Yep.
But whatever. That's not like I agree with you on how Javon Dexter is the only lineman. It feels like in the NFL that got called for a play that is happening at this point once every other week. But them's the breaks sometimes. There's also an argument, I think, Nick, for get the ball higher, Cairo, because if you can loft this thing, probably a good time to do it.
Yep.
But I also haven't gone back and like really watched it. I saw that they blocked the kick and did not watch a replay. I'm going to be honest. So there are pieces of that foul where it's like, yeah, maybe I'll
Mhm.
think something later, but I don't have something right now.
Yeah. So yeah, we talked about this in the
Somebody just posted this in our chat, Nick, not to interrupt you. Green Bay had 43 offensive plays. Do you know how many first downs they picked up?
no, I read it as well.
So that's 19 first downs.
Yep.
43 offensive plays, 19 first downs, only 6 forced third downs. I agree in general that you know what, Nick, there's something for situational defense. Being able to stand up twice back against the goal line, there is something admirable to that. But also, when your per play metrics are this bad, it is
8.5.
what'd you say?
8.5 yards per play.
8.5
Now
yards per
again,
play.
massively a 60-yard completion helps that massively, as does the other one to Watson. I feel like those two big plays put a lot into that, but again, they count. Like you can't just like take them away.
I mean, I agree. You can't take them away. And even better, Nick, if you take away the 60-yard bomb, I'm sure the yards per play figure falls to like a much more palatable, what, 6.8 yards per play? Like,
Yeah,
hooray.
basically.
But
You
all that to
you know
say,
you know what's crazy is, like, you look at again, not a lot he was 13 of 17, okay, with 1 pick, 1 sack for 1 yard, by the way. Um, Watson had 4 catches for 150, then Jacobs had 4 for 58, and then it's 23 yards, 17 yards, 13 yards. Like, that's it. Like those 2 guys and Jacobs had some huge receptions on catches he shouldn't have had a lot of. Like, it just felt like the Bears hurt themselves more than Green Bay won that game.
and I mean, I I don't know how to describe it because I felt like Jordan Love was the first quarterback to just fearlessly target Jalen Johnson, and Christian Watson lived up to the task, who, by the way, is quickly becoming a Bears killer because he doesn't look like this in any other, like against anybody else across his own career history. But of course, that's just how it goes, right? But I don't know. Like, I thought that Green Bay made their own mistakes. We've talked a lot about the offense defense piece of this, and we will move to the offense. And the main reason I think I wanted to make sure that we started on the defense is because if Flus has to own the defensive performance, which wasn't good, though it was situationally solid, if Flus has to own the situational decision making, which felt like it left us lacking, right? I liked burning the clock at the end of the first half, no matter
Love
how
that call.
confusing that was to some people. But dude, you just can't blow late game leads like this. I mean, in my opinion, the more we look at stuff like this, it's the most disturbing kind of trend, and it keeps bubbling back. Where, look, I'll be honest, Nick, like, let me try to give him the benefit of the doubt a little bit, right? Is Flus losing against the Broncos entirely Flus's fault? Well, I'd love it if the quarterback didn't turn the ball over twice. Is
Mhm.
Flus needing a miracle to beat the Vikings is that his fault? Well, I would love the quarterback to not turn the ball over twice.
Yep.
Is Flus losing to Detroit entirely his fault? Well, the players got to make a stop, and they had 2 drives to do it.
Mhm.
Fast forward, is the Hail Mary entirely Flus's fault? Well, we should be able to defend a Hail Mary. You don't
Yep.
even need to put a play call in. You could just send the dudes out there, and the expectation is that NFL defenders can knock that down. Is today entirely Flus's fault? Well, refereeing aside on a potential leverage play that I don't know anything about, you're expecting your field goal unit to make a 46-yard kick. But
Yep.
we can't keep doing this. Right?
No.
Am I crazy? Because we don't have an equal but opposite string of games. Only the Titans game where we say nobody else is willing yourself to a win. Somehow, Justin Tucker misses 2 kicks against the Steelers today in a game where I don't know if they win. This is just what Tomlin does. You play against Tomlin, you are under his spell. You are in his house. It is
Pittsburgh won.
hard. It is
Pittsburgh
hard
won.
to beat Pittsburgh, partially because their head coach, you could argue, is kind of a force of will. Whereas in Chicago, it feels like some way, somehow, the Bears are going to find a way to lose. And of course, there's 53 other guys minimum that are to be held accountable for things like this. But Nick, you got the defensive stop that made it a 20-19 game. You got the quarterback digging you out of a 3rd and 19. You got the ball with 1 timeout inside of field goal range. Somehow you didn't win. At what point do we sit here? Are you there already? Take a step back and say, apparently you have to win before these situations because we are just over in these kinds of moments.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, that's also what you tell your team, how they're prepared, heading into those situations too. Um, it was here's the positive. It didn't look like it was too big of a situation for Caleb. That was cool. And because I mean, let's go back. I mean, remember the back-to-back halfback screen thing with Tampa Bay with Justin Fields? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this is what we got to deal with. And I mean, again, like, y'all, I love Justin. Justin was bad in the fourth quarter of those pressure situations. He just was. And here, Caleb's not turning the ball over. He's not putting it in harm's way. I mean, he hasn't thrown a touchdown in forever. He hasn't thrown a pick in forever either. And it's not like there's like dropped picks or whatever. Like he's taking care of the football and he's running. He had I mean, that 3rd and 20, 3rd and 19 play when you had to have one, like defender has his hand on you again after you got sacked twice and finds Rome and just delivers a missile. And then the next one to Rome, which again, it's cool seeing Rome do this as me and you call him the wide receiver one. Like it was cool that those moments weren't too big for him. So again, as I've always said, this season's about, assessing Caleb and getting him developed. And we saw some of that today. That's the one cool part. It wasn't too big for him. Um, what's interesting in the stats here, Robert, because you've been mentioning them. DJ Moore had 7 targets and caught all 7. Again, he had the penalty on that dropped screen, y'all. So that got wiped away because he used his chest instead of hands to catch a short pass. Rome had 10 targets, caught 6. Komet had 3, caught 3. Allen had 8, caught 4. That's like a theme. Again, y'all, Keenan was better today, but man, he just does not catch all of his targets.
No, and I mean, you definitely had some misfires early. Like it's funny. Let's do the Caleb part before we. Actually, there is one other thing I do want to say because I saw a comment in here that I've seen a theme on Twitter. Right, there are a lot of people that are done with the concept of moral victories, and I got to be real. Okay, if you're listening to this podcast, you know that you just watched an entertainment product and now you are seeking out a separate entertainment product to now talk about the first entertainment product in which you know that you didn't have any control over the result. I didn't have any control over the result. And I don't sometimes, Nick, know what people want. Like, yeah, there's an element of cope when it comes to things like this, right? We'll vent some frustration. Let me see my back. Does it sound all right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're good.
We'll vent some frustrations. We will talk about, or we'll project into the future. We'll hope for the best. There is a piece of this where it's like, I'm not on the team, fam. Like, I understand that you don't want more moral victories. They lost, and they lost again to a team that has beaten them 11 times in a row that you should have known was going to win because they beat us 10 times in a row before this game. I don't know what to tell you. It'll change when it changes. And I hope that we see change. And neither of us are pro the current coaching staff. But
Nope.
and it's not like we're getting some wave of hate. It's more like I see people, Nick, that are holding quote Chicago media. I am not paid by the Bears. Stop calling me that. I see people saying Chicago media always being positive when there's only negative. And then I see other people that are like Chicago media can't be negative or can't be positive day in their life. And I'm like, cut it out. Like it's
Yeah, you can't win.
it's not actually super fun covering teams like this. That may shock you, but as hard as they are to watch, they are at least triple hard to make content about because somehow, Nick, we are back here again. But there is one thing different, and that's at least what left me relatively upbeat about this game. Nick, they started the first and second quarter with all of the rhythm quick hitter throws that they didn't call in the last 4 weeks game plans. It was
know.
like, we're just going
I
to stuff
know.
them all together.
And we talked about this when it's 3-by-1 throwing backside to your one-on-one on like a hitch on 3rd and 4 and it's a 5 or 6 yard hitch. It's like, yeah, the stuff everyone else does. Like we did it.
Don't like the first read? Just run, bro. And guess what? In the first half, Caleb picks up 6 carries for 60 yards, is ultimately one of the driving forces behind the Bears scoring their first touchdown in 25 tries, their only first quarter points that they've scored in what feels like weeks. And say what you will, Nick, you can't score all your points in the fourth quarter and win normally. You gotta keep a flow going. And the Bears did. I actually think, Nick, that the only reason the defense hung in there like they did is because the Bears offense didn't give the Packers time to just trial and error, and get all the
Yeah.
bad ones out early, right? And that's part of what made this offense so complimentary. And it was a quarterback that did it. I know DeAndre Swift broke off a late run or like a big run later, but it's not like Roshan and DeAndre down to down had this amazing day. The Bears offensive line was not eaten against the Packers or Packers defensive line. It was a stalemate. If not, the Bears were losing a yard. The quarterback just figured it out. And I got to tell you, Nick, it was pretty fun. I don't want to use the S word, the one that starts with SP and ends in Eschel, Like, I don't want to use that word for the
Mhm.
second half because they lost a game and I refuse to use that label. But it was pretty fun watching the first quarter and the second quarter build into a second half where Caleb got to play his way. And I believe that culminated in that 3rd and 19 ball that had to be completed because if you don't, you have nearly no chance on 4th and 19. It was awesome.
Um,
It really
no,
was.
yeah. The 4th and 3 is my favorite, and I don't know if I talked about it this one or the pre-pod, but, like, the 4th and 3 fade to Roma Dunze when you wanna throw it for maybe 5 yards and convert or run and convert, and he trusted his guy on a back shoulder fade was just, like, awesome. I'm I'm switching gears here just because I saw this stat, okay? Green Bay only had the ball 3 times in the second half. 3. Every drive was over 70 yards. 6 plays, 70 yards. 7 plays, 75 yards. 4 plays, 78 yards. Oh, that's so bad, man.
Their first drive was over 70 yards, and I believe that their third drive, the pick, was
61.
60. So everything over 50. Dude, Nick, that's where I'm sitting. I'm sitting here like,
Bad.
if you look at the tail of the tape, the Bears almost stole a game that they should have lost pretty decidedly. And they only almost stole it because their offense was up to the task. And I mean,
Mhm.
Nick, simple things like, hey, Braxton Jones is a good run blocker. Why don't we use that? Simple things like, hey, Rome is a great contested catch guy. Let's get him one on one. And Caleb, you got the green light to throw to him. Simple things, Nick. Like, let's line up under center. And if you don't like it, kill. That's it. No big audible, no big check, no step up to the line, tell everybody something, and have two guys not hear you and completely lose a sense of what's going on. Just
Yep.
step up, the chest rip kill that we've seen in every offense around the NFL, and get to a decent run play. I mean, Nick, it felt so simple, even down to, I don't know if you caught this. Brady caught it, that Jordan Love started the game not really with great eyes. Like he would have a receiver open and he would turn and find a different open receiver, which is great. But if you do that in Chicago, we get mad because we want our quarterback to hit the first read that he sees open, right? But the Bears paring this thing down to, hey, you're going to get one look. If you like it, throw it. If you don't like it, run. Great way to start the game. Like, chill out. Don't act like you're MVP Matt Ryan when you haven't established anything yet in the NFL. In your last two games, I don't think you've broken 200 passing yards. All of it builds on itself. Is it really so shocking, Nick, that finally by the end of the game, Caleb feels confident enough in what he's doing that he lets a couple balls go to Rome, Keenan Allen, and stacks yards? As the game progresses, he hits a dot to Cole Kmet that he hasn't hit pretty much all season, at least not in the last 4 weeks, partially because you let the kid get into rhythm. I know this is reaching. I thought that deep ball to Roma Dunze was the most competitive miss of the season. You may
Mhm.
not care. I care a great deal. That actually looked like it was in the area code, as opposed to some of these deep balls, which have been utter air mails. It all seemed like it worked. Kudos to Thomas Brown. Watching him get stoked about that touchdown to Roshan Johnson was really rad. It was like, look at that coach getting amped up for his team.
Mhm.
What did you think about Caleb, the offense, and the rest of the package?
Yeah, I like that they rotated Roshan with Swift. I think it kept them a little bit more fresh, kept them a little more hungry than when they're in there all the time. I thought sometimes they made stuff when nothing was there. Kudos to Jake Curran, who had to play early. Bates had a concussion, and I joked, I was like, "Oh yeah, that's fine. We have so much depth in the interior line." So kudos to him for stepping in, and he had a big pancake on a passing down early. Um, Man, Swift making that cut on the sideline was like really nice in terms of he finally didn't spin. I wish he would just juke and stop spinning. Um, one concern I do have that I wrote down here was one of the only things I didn't cover yet is it feels like the Bears passing game is very static in terms of when they throw it, the guy is looking completely at Caleb and catching it. And then they're like, I don't know. They turn around and then they don't get a lot of yak afterwards instead of like hitting guys in stride and then you get a lot of yards afterwards. That would be one negative that I have, but I feel like Thomas Brown put guys in better positions to succeed. So that part is good. I thought Caleb played loose and free and more confident. Um, and I thought also, I mean, the receivers looked like they were dinged up here and there, but they wanted to be out there. Like the Bears at least looked hungry. I have one other stat for you defensively, though. I just counted this up. So the Packers ran 43 plays. And as you know, they have 19 first downs. And one of those is on a penalty. So 18 earned, through their yardage. Out of 43 plays, Robert, how many of them were 10 or more yards?
It felt like 12.
It is 12.
I've been better at these pull a number out of your wheres than I
Yeah, yeah.
expected to be this
I
season.
mean, but 12, Robert, and again, I know Hicks is in there, you don't have Brisker, and I know you don't have Billings. Give everybody else. That is so unacceptable. Like,
Yeah.
where was TJ Edwards today? Where was Tremaine Edmonds today? Where was Kyler Gordon today?
Oh, Kyler Gordon was getting dossed up.
I know.
I mean, those guys, that one I know. Nobody in the Bears secondary had a particularly good week, which is a great reminder that the Bears secondary, I don't know. How do I bring up the Brisker thing? This feels ugly. Like
It is.
what I'm seeing, like, yes, of course, I'm absolutely wishing the best for Brisker, but at least I heard Mason West on his podcast say that he doesn't like how this reads for the Bears training staff. And I do trust Mason's opinion. This is what he does for a living. And that's the kind of wording that I don't really want to hear about a training staff, especially when it comes to dealing with concussions. Like there's some ugliness going on with some of the injury treatment and specifically Brisker. Like going to IR after 5 weeks of trying to clear concussion protocol is enough to make you worry about somebody. But I do feel like Nick, I don't know. I feel caught between. Like I don't want a hot potato between subjects. I just don't feel like the defense underperforming was anything unexpected. Am I allowed to say that? Like this is a team that's missing its cornerstone player in Andrew Billings, and I have no faith in the coach. That's the best way I could put this, right?
Yep,
Them
I
getting
guess.
dossed up by a Packers team that I couldn't explain it to you. Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson don't seem to have the code to Eberflus's defense. I expect them to this season. They just hung 49 points on Jacksonville. They are ripping on offense. So I imagine they'll finally get their due this season. But Green Bay has always put up 1 billion yards per play against Green Bay. But there's nothing to say about it. And maybe that's it. Maybe I just feel like everything's already been said,
Yeah.
right? Whereas with Caleb Williams, at least this is how I felt, Nick. The Bears were trending in a really horrible direction. There's what is it? It's Kevin O'Connell in Stephen Ruiz's latest article, which was 3 steps to ruining a promising young quarterback. It's a great read. It's on the Ringer for anybody who wants to read it. Kevin O'Connell has a quote in there where he says, "I believe organizations fail quarterbacks before quarterbacks fail organizations." And over the first 8 weeks or 9 weeks of the season, I believe the Bears had failed Caleb Williams to the point where we were having media consistently asking whether or not Caleb was going to start the next game. Dude, when you start down this road, it erodes confidence in a player. It erodes trust between a player and an organization. You start to get everybody, whether it's head coaches, offensive coordinators, even GMs, starting to leak things to the media in an attempt to save jobs. You don't know what to trust. You don't know who to listen to. You've got Breer and Rappaport saying that Caleb Williams just wasn't ready, which is part of what contributed to the firing. Like, you get it, Nick.
Mhm.
Bad place, right? And I believe that you were 1 4 sack, 2 interception, 0 touchdown, 145-yard game away from the arrow starting to point in the wrong direction. And against all of that, I thought Caleb Williams was a leader today. We could
Mhm.
talk about stats. We could talk about throws. We could talk about runs. We could talk about specific plays. I would tell you honestly, Nick, I thought it was bigger than that, right? Mitch in 2018 felt like he was the quarterback that was being orchestrated by Matt Nagy, which I had no problem with. Like
Yep.
that can work. There are a lot of quarterbacks that win that way. Justin Fields felt like he was the guy, but in the moment, he was not the guy. And that unfortunately got hammered home over large stretches. But in the last 4 games, Nick, in the last 4 games, only 2 of them have been close. And in the 2 that were close, Caleb Williams has led the rally in the fourth quarter that gave the Bears an opportunity to win. Once against Washington, again today. This is very good, and I don't want to see it another way. I don't think you can. I mean, Caleb Williams is going to come out with a great statistical game from this. He's probably going to get a sick ESPN QBR. He's probably going to get a sick PFF grade, or like PFF grade. I think I saw that it's like an 80.0 on review. You don't have to care about these things.
Mm.
What I care about is that he seems like he's a leader on the field. And then off the field, I don't know if you heard this, Caleb Williams explicitly sought out Jake Curran to acknowledge and say, we couldn't have gotten there without you. He said, I would put that kicking unit back out there again. I trust those guys. Those guys can handle it. Like, he has been a rock that this franchise, it seems like, can stand on. We haven't seen that in a while. Remains to be seen whether or not that rock will crack, but this feels different. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, it's weird. It's weird to have confidence in a Bears quarterback. I mean, like, when's the last time that's happened? I go back to like my Eric Kramer days, or that end of season Jim Miller days, or Cutler when he had Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey days. Sometimes, depending on which Cuddy he got, but it's also because he's calling everything at the line. He's doing the no huddle stuff. He's making the checks. He's killing plays. Like, he's doing all of that stuff that, again, this season's about developing Caleb. And so he's doing all that stuff, you'd think he's getting more and more looks that he's seen from defenses, and then he's going to continually improve. He's going to get tricked less. Like the boot where he got sacked for 10 yards, which, by the way, killed the drive.
Mm-hmm.
Was that on him? Should he peak earlier? Maybe he learns from that. So, like, again, I think a lot of this stuff is learning building blocks. And in the back of my mind, because this is Green Bay, Robert, I have a bunch of text messages right now,
Yep.
from people, Packers fans mainly. I've had a bunch, and they're like, "Oh, this is the best the Bears have been in, a while. Oh, you guys are going to win this game." And I'm like, "No, we're going to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory." Like, I was waiting for it, but I was waiting for Caleb to be the one to fumble, to throw a pick, etc. And he doesn't do that. So again, like, I'm not looking for, like, huge positives and out of a pretty negative game. But again, this season's about developing Caleb. And so if he is continually making good decisions, he's going to give his defense and the rest of his offense and his coaching staff more opportunities to win games versus turning the ball over continually, because we know that's a big indicator. And even in this game, 3 sacks, which one was -1 yard, like, I don't know, not a huge one. Like those are normally drive killers. One was, the other one wasn't. So, like, reducing sacks, no turnovers, again, like, all this stuff is going to set your team up to win more games long term. This year, I think that's already out. We already know that this team is not set up for that with the coaching staff. But 2025, 2026, depending on who is here, Caleb Williams is going to be, odds are, that guy. I have confidence in him to be a positive EV quarterback for Chicago.
It feels to me, I like to be a statistical guy. I like to be a film guy. For a moment, Nick, I am going to dip into the part of me that's a storyteller and a gut feeler. And then we'll get out of here because you've been such a tough Madison, Wisconsin resident to live in this moment for any longer than you have to. It feels to me like the greatest quarterbacks in this league are a force of will, where 13 seconds left, Josh Allen just converted a 4th and 20, which in and of itself was a force of will moment. And Pat Mahomes just takes the game back in a way that's hard to explain another way. Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady meet in the playoffs, and whoever's winning the coin toss is winning the game, and that's exactly what happens. Pat Mahomes gets to the Super Bowl, wins the coin toss, and the game is over, you just don't know how. And you see this a lot. You have seen it a lot. Aaron Rodgers cocking back a Hail Mary, and more than ever, there's actually a chance he's going to nail this, right? And I can't help but feel like the Bears had a quarterback in this game that kept me interested with the defense telling me to turn the game off. And that is something, at least for me, that I come away with pretty upbeat. It's kind of my final thought in this, where, like you're saying, if the rest of the season is ultimately about figuring out what's going on at quarterback, developing Caleb, maybe
Mhm.
not, I don't know. There are a lot of people, there's still like a Bajan hive. And I guess I want to acknowledge that that exists, but I do think that's a little.
I like Bajent. I think you like Bajent. I mean, I think he's one of the better backup quarterbacks in the NFL. He's not on Caleb's level.
No. And even if he was, you're just not. No, there's no even if he was. Like, to entertain it is a little outrageous. But so, anyways, I this game was not fun, but it was more fun than I thought it was, because I thought it was just going to be a pounding. And instead, it was the tightest Bears Packers game I've seen in years. So,
Mhm.
what is your final take?
Um, while I don't, again, this is going to go on a completely different topic though. But I'm just going to put it in the atmosphere, okay? And we'll talk about it in a future pod, but people can marinate on it. The head coaching change is going to happen, y'all. Okay, like I'm very convinced of this. I put a tweet out, Robert. Not sure if you saw it. My top three candidates. Okay, so we can marinate on that one, and then people can kind of go with, you know, their merry way. Ben Johnson's the one that everyone wants. I don't know that Chicago can afford him. Can ownership willing to pay a guy like that. The other two I have is Todd Monken with Baltimore, a guy that's been head coach before, has been since that I think was a failure, success at University of Georgia, winning national championships, and then Baltimore running the best offense in the league roughly this year. Last year, pretty good with again different guys, different strengths, etc. And then the other one is Dan Lanning, just in terms of like a culture type of guy. And again, I know it's college, people,
No, I like
aren't as
Lanning. I think it's
aren't
hard
as
to
sure
not
on that
like
one.
Lanning.
What?
I said I like Lanning. I think
Yeah.
it's hard to
Well,
not like Lanning.
to me, like he gives me like the Dan Campbell vibe,
Hmm.
and to me, I know he's a defensive guy, but like if you're bringing a culture guy, it's just different because I think that's like what his big thing is. But also, I know people say college coaches don't ever succeed. Um, but college guys want to get out of college now because of the NIL. So again, that's my thought with it. Those are three. Again, who knows? Chicago's probably end up with like the eighth guy who's the cheapest. But anyway,
I refuse to get into it. I'm gonna be blunt.
you're
Like,
fine.
yeah, there's a coaching thing, but this is kind of like the okay, what do you think of Caleb while Fields was still the quarterback for 4 weeks? Where it's like, I think we know it's coming, but there's also enough season left where if you want Eberflus going, I think you got to focus on just surviving the next couple games. What's interesting is if the Bears quarterback does take a step forward, just like this, dude, they're gonna be in games. Like a couple more 3-and-outs, and the Packers beat the Bears by 2 scores. But they didn't go 3-and-out. They bled the game down. So what? Each team got 6 total drives. Like, it was not a very drive heavy game or possession to possession. So it's great. I mean, that's fun. It just means that it's going to be a little harder to fire Eberflus if he's the guy that developed Caleb, and also the Bears don't drop a bunch of football games. So Bears fan, if you don't like Eberflus, you might be in a bit of a pickle with what you're cheering for. But we'll figure all that out later. For now, go enjoy the rest of your Sunday, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Like the show if you enjoyed it. If you didn't, let me know why. And until next time, thanks so much for bearing with us. Nick, you got to go. I got to go. I'll cut the recording there and we'll roll. Ready?
All right, have a good one, man.
Thank you guys so much.